because we don't want to miss anything he says.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I am a recovered alcoholic, and I'm most pleased to be here. Thank you, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. Thank you all for joining. Happy to be here. I think this light behind me is really funny. This light in my hotel room, it's like glowing. That's funny. That's funny to me. So I'm really glad you guys are all here. I know I'm glad I'm here. I'm currently in Houston, Texas right now. Most of you know my hometown is Calgary, Alberta, Canada. My home group is the primary purpose group of Calgary, Alberta. Sobriety date, February 18th, 2009, as you can clearly see there. And I'm happy to be here and to be sharing this stuff with you. So as we always do, let's get into it. Let's begin with the set-aside prayer, which goes a little something like this. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, about the 12 steps, and please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And as this is the fourth dimension big book study, I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first of all, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes, we have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. All right, we're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for those of you who will, please join me and put one hand up like this. And put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. I never get tired of that. I love it. I love it. Okay, guys, I'm pumped, man. Tonight is going to be a great study. We're going to finish off the doctor's opinion tonight, and I don't think we're gonna try to push through much beyond that. What I want to do is review the cycle of alcoholism that we talked about in depth last week, that we get from Dr. Silkworth, and I also want to get some feedback from you guys. I want you to tell me some of your cycle stories. I think I talked about that last week. You know, we've talked about there's no homework exactly in this particular big book study that we do, but I am going to ask you guys to participate from time to time. And tonight is certainly going to be one of those, and it's a lot of fun. Like, we have a lot of fun with this. Okay, so with that said, just by way of review, just quickly, I want to remind everyone, foundationally, in this study, one of the foundational comments in this study is that, and we get this from the great Chuck Chamberlain, Chuck C. If you've never listened to Chuck C before as an AA speaker, don't go to sleep tonight until you've listened to Chuck C. Go check out Chuck C. You will hear him talk about the transition that I need to make as an alcoholic in Alcoholics Anonymous is a transition from being a taker to being a giver, okay? From selfish to selfless. Okay, that's the transition that I needed to make, that I still need to make, that I am still making. I can still be a taker. I can still be selfish. I don't know about y'all, but but I can definitely make that transition from being I needed to make that transition from being a taker to a giver. So that's really foundational to everything we're ever going to do in this study. The next piece that I want to share with you guys, we've talked about it a lot, I know, but I want to share it with you again, are the 3 things that every alcoholic needs to know in order to achieve recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got these from really Joe and Charlie. And now these are in the big book, guys, but I really needed Joe and Charlie to kind of pull it out of the book and make it simple for me. And thank God that they did. 3 things that I need to know. I needed to know what the problem is. I need to know what the solution is. And I need a program of action that I can do to achieve that solution to overcome the problem. Our program of action in Alcoholics Anonymous are the 12 steps. We do those 12 steps, those 12 spiritual actions to achieve a spiritual experience. That is our solution. Our solution, we believe in Alcoholics Anonymous, okay, is a spiritual experience as the result of those 12 steps. And as when I introduce myself as a recovered alcoholic, what I really am saying is that as the result of the 12 steps and the actions of the 12 steps, I have accessed and gained access to a power that has expelled my obsession to drink alcohol. That's really it. That's what it means to be a recovered alcoholic, okay? And we learn what the problem is. I need to know what the problem is that I'm trying to overcome in the first place. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, okay? It describes it in the foreword to the 2nd edition as the grave nature of alcoholism, okay? It says the broker from this doctor, Dr. Silkworth, we'll see there, the broker learned the grave nature of alcoholism, okay? Physical allergy, mental obsession. And so we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this in depth tonight. We're going to talk about the doctor's opinion, okay? And what we're really going to talk about is the cycle of alcoholism. And I'll share that with you right now. This is how we format it. This is how we visualize it in our in this study. In this study is where we really kind of began with this. I remember the day I had never seen it quite like this before, but I remember the day we were doing this same study. This is almost 14, 15 years ago. It was a Sunday afternoon, and we were up in this other place where we used to do this big book study. There was really just a small group of us, and that's the first time we kind of read through this. You know, the doctor's opinion, we'd read through it many times. So this is the first time we really kind of visualized it like this. And so what I'd like to do, Brad, my main man, Brad, one of my sponsees who I love very much, Brad's going to be our reader tonight. So Brad, if you'd be kind enough to go to the bottom of page XXVIII, okay? It's Roman numeral 28, brothers and sisters, XXVIII, Roman numeral 28, and let's read this cycle, okay? And I want you to follow along and see what Dr. Silkworth is saying, where it fits into this cycle, okay?
Hey, everybody, I'm Brad Soloto. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Hi, Brad.
Thanks, Kevin. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery.
Okay, excellent. And so this is how we visualize that. Okay, this is the visual representation of the cycle that we just talked about. Okay, alcoholics, we are restless, irritable, and discontent, and unless we can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. You know, right, just probably about a half hour ago, I was talking to a sponsee of mine, and he's sober, he's in treatment, he's been sober for a few weeks now, and he's telling me, man, I really want to drink. I really want to drink. Okay. Now, I understand what he means. I understand wanting to drink, but what I had to highlight to him is like, you know, brother, you don't actually want to drink. What you want is to no longer feel the way that you're feeling. What you want is to no longer feel this restlessness, irritability, and discontent. The only solution that you have had up till now, the only way to achieve a sense of ease and comfort that you know of, is to have a few drinks, okay? And so we succumb to this insane idea that taking a few drinks is going to be okay. I just need to get some ease and comfort. That's all I need to do. I just need to get rid of this restlessness, irritability, and discontent. Well, we call that the spiritual malady in Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? The restlessness, irritability, and discontent, resentment, fear, shame, guilt, terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair, the hideous four horsemen of alcoholism, all of that stuff, okay, is the real root of my problem. The root of my problem is this spiritual sickness, this spiritual malady. And I always like to ask the question, like, guys, am I restless, irritable, and discontent when I'm drinking, or am I restless, irritable, and discontent when I'm sober? And I've asked that question to like thousands, well, that's an exaggeration. I'll say hundreds of alcoholics in my life. And they never get that question wrong. They always know, no, I'm restless, irritable, and discontent when I'm sober. Yes. So what's your problem? Well, Jack Daniels is my problem. Vodka is my problem. Drinking is my problem, right? And it looks like a drinking problem on the face of it. When we show up at the hospital, or we show up in jail, or we show up in the treatment center, it looks like a drinking problem. But what we know is that it's actually an internal spiritual maladjustment problem, okay? We are maladjusted to life, okay? And that's me when I'm sober, okay? And eventually, because I need to get that sense of ease and comfort, I'm going to take that drink, okay? How does that happen? How does that happen? Something has to happen in between when I'm feeling that way and when I pick up that drink. Joe and Charlie talk about this all the time. All action is born in thought. Every action. It's impossible for me to even say, I'm going to pick up this coffee here without thinking about picking up the coffee first. Something has to happen, okay, before taking that drink. And in my case, in the case of any alcoholic, we have a thought, okay? And the problem with alcoholic thinking is that that thought is completely insane. We call it alcoholic insanity. I used to think the insanity of alcoholism, guys, was the crazy, insane things I did when I was drinking, okay? I did, I stole the car and I, drove it into the 7-Eleven and then, whatever it is, all the crazy stuff that I did when I was drinking. That's not the insanity of alcoholism. The insanity of alcoholism is that I'm going to do all of those same things again next time when I believe the lie and pick up another drink, okay? So we have this inability to distinguish the true from the false. That's what Dr. Silkworth says, an inability to distinguish the true from the false. True things look false to me and false things look true to me. I believe the lie. That's what I think about alcoholism as the big lie, okay? If you're writing this out or you're taking a picture of this or whatever, this cycle, I like to think of the mental obsession, the insanity of alcoholism as the big lie. That's what I'll call it. The big lie preceding me picking up that first drink. Now, here's the thing, guys. When I'm restless, irritable, and discontent, am I drunk or am I sober? Sober. When I have this insane thought, guys, am I drunk or am I sober? I am absolutely sober. Y'all know the story in the big book about Jim who puts whiskey in his milk. He can do it on a full stomach and he's fine. Give me a thumbs up if you know what story I mean. Okay? That story has one of the scariest 3 words in our book. The scariest 3 words in the book. And those 3 words are suddenly the thought. Suddenly the thought. That's it, man. That is the difference between life and death for people like us. Those 3 words. Some people like to say the obsession of drinking is like, I'm obsessing about it all the time. I'm obsessing. When I'm not drinking, I'm obsessing about it all the time. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes when I would get sober, I wouldn't be thinking about it, and I wouldn't be thinking about it, and I wouldn't be thinking about it, and suddenly the thought. And I had no effective mental defense against that, and I would pick up the first drink. And Dr. Silkworth refers to this, to me picking up the first drink as creating this physical allergy for alcohol. Okay. I pick up that drink and I trigger this allergy within me. Okay. Allergy for what? Allergy for, this allergy manifests itself in a phenomenon of craving. A craving for what? Craving for more alcohol. Once I start drinking, I have no control over the amount that I'm going to take. Okay. It's like choosing to start dancing with a gorilla. Okay. The dance is not over until the gorilla says it's over. Okay. I love this, man. Somebody told me one time that drinking is like, I'm from Canada. In Canada, we have a lot of ice, okay, especially in the wintertime, okay? And for me to start drinking is like driving on a brick wall, driving towards a brick wall on sheer ice, okay? And I can stomp on that brake as much as I want, and I can try to swerve all that I want, and it doesn't matter. I can't stop. I'm going to hit that brick wall. That's what happens when I start drinking. And that pedal that we're stomping on to try and stop, that's willpower. Okay. We're trying to stop all that we can, but we're going to hit that brick wall every time. And that's the spree. Okay. So we enter the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, and we all know how that feels. Okay. We all know what emerging remorseful feels like. And now we reach the firm resolution. Okay. And I like to call this the alcoholic national anthem. Okay. And every person on this call right now has said those magic words before and failed. I know that. That's the definitive hallmark of what makes an alcoholic. An alcoholic is someone who has said those words, I'm never going to drink again, and then drank again and not know why, and failed at that. Now, there are teams of people who never, ever in their whole life say, I'm never going to drink again. We call those normal drinkers. Normal drinkers. Chuck Chamberlain, Chuck C, has another great line. He says, if you are wondering if you might be an alcoholic, it's already too late. If you are wondering if you might be an alcoholic, it's already too late. Because normal drinkers never wonder if they are alcoholics. They never wonder it. They never say those magic words. Now, there are some people who will say those words, that's it, I'm never going to drink again. They get in trouble and they say, I'm never going to drink again. And you know what happens to them? They never drink again. A lot of the people that Dr. Silkworth saw at his hospital never drank again. They would come, they would look like they had a drinking problem. They would take the medicine, they would take the cure, and they would leave, and they'd never come back. And about 1 out of every 10, like this fella, Bill Wilson, our co-founder, would show up at the hospital singing that national anthem, I'm never going to drink again. And what was it? What did we say last week, Rob? He was there, what was it, July, October, and December. Bill Wilson was in the hospital 3 times in 1934. Can you recall? I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that. If you can look into that, I'd appreciate it again. I should remember that. 3 times in 1934. Well, I bet you there's people on this call who've been in a treatment center more than 3 times in 1 year. Okay? That's not even unusual for us. I see some laughter. Like, yeah. Okay? I've been in and out of I had one sponsee that had 2 24-hour key tags in the same day. Okay? He went to a morning meeting, said, that's it, I'm done. And then went home and had a thought. Suddenly the thought occurred that he could have a couple drinks. Okay? And went and got drunk again and went back to an AA meeting that night and took another 24-hour tag. Okay? Firm resolution, swearing off with and without solemn oath, all the things that the big book says. Okay? And in some cases, guys, it may not be that you necessarily swore off forever. I'm never going to drink again. Sometimes it was just about controlling it. Sometimes it was, how am I going to manage my drinking? Or I'm going to drink just beer and no more hard alcohol. Or I'm going to, whatever it might be. Those are all firm resolutions that we're not going to do that again, that we're going to control and exert our willpower. Okay? And then what happens? What happens is what we call the unmanageability of alcoholism. And what was taught to me, guys, is that the unmanageability of alcoholism has nothing to do with drinking. Unmanageability of alcoholism has to do with the way that I think and the way that I feel, and how the way that I feel impairs the way that I think, and towards having this insane lie in my mind that I can pick up a couple drinks and this time it's going to be fine. Alcoholism is a disease that continues on when I'm drinking and when I'm not drinking. And the unmanageability of my life matters far more when I'm not drinking. the way that I feel and the way that I think, and how that convinces me to start drinking again every time. Bob D, famous AA speaker, says that alcoholism is a disease that begins when I stop drinking. That's the real problem. The end result of the unmanageability of alcoholism in my mind and in the way that I feel is that I pick up a drink. Okay, so that's what Dr. Silkworth has outlined for us in terms of the cycle of alcoholism. Now, how do I use this with my sponsees? How do we use this at Primary Purpose Group? How do I use this with my sponsees? How would I like to use this with us tonight? Okay. What I do with my sponsees in terms of qualifying them as alcoholics and ensuring that they have this disease is seeing if they exhibit the symptoms of this disease. Okay. Because what this really is the symptomology or the pathology for the disease of alcoholism as given to us by Dr. William D. Silkworth in the chapter, The Doctor's Opinion. Okay. And what does a medical doctor do? A medical doctor looks at, has in his mind all the symptoms of all the diseases. And we show up in his office and we say, well, these are the symptoms that I'm experiencing. And he looks at those symptoms and he compares them to the diseases that he knows about. And he says, I think that you have diabetes, or I think that you have a heart condition, or I think that you have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. I think that you have COVID-19, whatever it is. Okay. We compare the symptoms of the disease that we have to the symptoms of the diseases that he knows about. In this case, however, Dr. Silkworth is not here to diagnose us. We got to diagnose ourselves. And the way to do that is to use this cycle. And I ask my sponsees to come up with 5 stories from their own life that match this cycle. Okay. How do we do that? We start, I think the best place to start is with firm resolution. Firm resolution is a definitive point in time, okay, where I have said, that's it. And I'll remember I went to treatment, or I got in trouble and I went to AA, or I got in trouble and I swore off that I was never going to drink, in Edmonton again. And I moved to Calgary and that was how I was going to control it, or whatever it was. Okay. Whatever the resolution was. So I'll ask my sponsees to pick that time. Okay. And then I want to know what happened to you during, or what didn't happen to you during the period of sobriety. Talk to me about the time of sobriety and how you became restless, irritable, and discontent. Okay. I want to talk about what happened during this time, and more importantly, what wasn't happening or what didn't happen. Okay. What was I not doing in terms of my recovery? Okay. So I can take a look, and then I get restless, irritable, and discontent, spiritually sick, filled with resentment and fear and lying and all that stuff. I get crazy. And then I want to pinpoint exactly what was the thought. What exactly was the thought before that you had when you were sober? You had this insane thought that convinced you this time it was going to be okay. This time it was going to be different. This time you weren't going to get in trouble. This time you'd be able to control it. No one would know. Okay. Or whatever it is, whatever the insane thought. And sometimes the thought is, you know what? Screw it. I don't care. I know I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to burn the house down tonight. Let's go. Okay. And I understand that too. I drank that way as well. We'll talk more about that when we get to the chapter more about alcoholism, what it means when an alcoholic begins to drink deliberately instead of casually. It's still just as insane. Okay. When I decided to destroy my life over and over again and said, I don't care anymore. Yeah, it's funny how much I care suddenly 4 days later when I come out the other end, emerging remorseful. Suddenly I care a lot, okay? The insanity of alcoholism is this terrible, terrible, insane thinking that we have. Very, very little period of effective thought before the period of drinking, okay? So I take the first drink, trigger the allergy, the craving, enter a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. So I ask my sponsees to come up with 5 stories from their own life that match this cycle. Okay. So I'm going to share one of my stories with you guys right now, so you know kind of what they sound like. And then I'm going to ask my sponsee Brad to share one from his life. And then I would love to hear a couple more from you guys, man. It lights me up. I love, this is like one of my favorite parts of the Big Book story, is taking you guys through the cycle. Okay, so we can start to understand. You'll start to see like there's a rhythm to them. There's a pattern to them that you'll start to get and understand. And this is like, it's just like anything, man. You just got to get reps in. Just get a lot of reps in of doing this cycle. One of the ways to do that is start sponsoring people. Take other people through this work, man. It's brilliant. So I was just thinking about this one the other night. I was living in a little town called Medicine Hat. Population about 50,000 people. And I was a bad drinker. I had a drinking problem. Everyone knew I had a drinking problem. And it was bad. And I'd been on like a 3-week run, and I was in a lot of trouble a lot. And I knew it. And I knew that I needed to get a job. I needed to straighten my life out, man. I needed to pull myself up by my socks and go get a job. And just, this is enough of this, right? I'm gonna change my life. I'm a changed man. I know it. Okay. And I need to go back to work. I had been a waiter, like a server at restaurants, lots of restaurants in Medicine Hat. And so, and there's only so many restaurants in Medicine Hat. I kind of burned my bridge at most of them, but I went to this restaurant called Kelsey's and, talked to the manager and whatever. And I can suit up, man. I interview real well. Okay. I can interview well. Okay. And I went to the thing and wore a tie and went in and talked my way in. And he said, okay, so you got the job. You can start tomorrow morning. Okay, great. And probably some people are already seeing where this is going, right? And what was the thought? Okay. So I come out of there, and what was the thought that I had? The insane thought that I had was, well, I just got my new job. I'm going to celebrate. Okay. I'm going to celebrate. And I'm not getting, no. Everybody's laughing. Like, I'm not doing that tonight. I'm just going to have a couple. It's not a big deal. Okay. Now prior to this, man, filled with guilt, shame, and remorse. And I hated myself, and I hated what I was doing. And that, like, even, the part in the book where it says, it was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. You and I know underneath that guy are storm clouds. Underneath, deep within him, okay, is all that spiritual sickness, as it was within me. Okay. That was still there. Okay. That had not gone away. But I had this little thing that I was going to celebrate. I was going to celebrate this new little job that I had. And so I take that first drink, triggered that allergy. And man, I got just tongue chewing drunk that night, and falling down, puking in ashtrays, drunk, and just a donkey. And the next morning, I remember coming to, and I checked the alarm clock, and it said 7 o'clock. Right? 7 in the morning. And I was like, oh, okay, good. Thank God. I had to be there at 11 for the lunch rush. I'm like, I had to be there at 11. It was 7 o'clock. Thank God. And then it didn't take me very long to realize that it was actually 7 p.m. And I just had no idea. And I had lost my job, and I destroyed everything again, and all that. Okay. So that's what one of these cycle stories sounds like. Okay. I was going to straighten out my life and change everything. Okay. But I knew, and I wasn't loving life, and I wasn't loving who I was. And I knew I was still kind of a dirtbag, but I went anyway, and I got this job. I get the job, and I tell myself I'm going to go celebrate. Had that insane thought that I'm just going to have a couple drinks, took the drink, triggered the craving, entered the spree, emerging remorseful, lost the job again, over and over and over. Okay. This is repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. Okay. So that's one cycle story. That's one of my cycle stories. Again, we start with a firm resolution. We talk about what happened during the period of sobriety, or what wasn't happening during the period of sobriety. We talk about the insane thought that precedes the first drink. And that, in my case, it was, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to go out and have just a couple with my buddies to celebrate my new job, and I'll go to work in the morning. Okay. Took that drink, triggered the allergy, and I was gone. All right. So that's one story. Brad, over to you. I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment.
Sure.
I can say hi to everyone. But why don't you offer us one of your stories? And then I'm wondering if there's anyone out there who's feeling brave, might want to volunteer a story of their own. And don't worry, if you don't quite get it, I I will coach you through it. I have done this hundreds of times over the last 15 years, and I love doing it. Okay, so I'm hoping someone will trust me and trust this big book study enough to do this. All right, I see Morgan. Morgan stepping up. I love it. Okay, Brad, but you go first and give us another little bit of a flavor of what these sound like.
Sure, I have a few different ones that I like to share in big book studies, but I'm going to share this one from when my now grown kids were toddlers. So I've always worked in downtown Calgary, and at this time I was living out in the suburbs. And like I said, my kids were toddlers, and I'd wake up in the morning and that's it. Today's the day. I'm not going to drink today. Everything's going to be great. I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to come home and be the ultimate dad. So I'd get to work, and of course, sometime throughout the day, I would generally be talking to my buddy Al, who lived in my same neighborhood as I did. And by the end of the day, I would have phoned my wife and said, "Hey, I'm just stopping in at the neighborhood pub to see my buddy Al. I'll be home for supper. We'll feed those kids, we'll bath them, read them their bedtime stories, and tuck them in. All's going to be great." But so I would, head to that neighborhood pub in the deep south part of Calgary and meet up with my buddy Al. And of course, I'd order a beer. And at this point, everything's great. I'm still going home, going to be home in time for supper, have that first beer. I said I was coming for two, so I'd order a second one. And generally, as soon as I'd ordered that second one and the server had left, I'd be like, I should have ordered two, because I can drink two beers really quick, and I could have three beers, still going home. Nobody's the wiser, right? So the server would bring me the second one. I guzzle most of it because I ordered the third one right away and send them back and tell them I'm kind of in a hurry. And I drink most of that second one so that I wouldn't have two beers in front of me. Then I'm drinking that third beer, and by the time I'm drinking the third beer, I forget I'm going home. And I don't forget because I'm drunk. I just I'm not going home anymore, right? Like that allergies kicked in, and I'm staying, right, for the rest of the night. And so eventually, they kick everybody out at 2 a.m. So I'm home by 2:10. Because I'm literally, a few blocks from my house. I always say sometimes there was words and sometimes they weren't. There was no words, and I'm not sure which one was worse. So I'd wake up in the morning and that's it. I'm not doing that again. I can't believe I fell for that. There's no way in heck I'm going to drink again today. And usually by lunchtime, I'm in a pub downtown. Once they invented these smartphones, I could do my job from anywhere. So I'm either in a pub downtown or I'm making plans to meet up my buddy Al again, right? And that same thing happens again, right? So that night again, and that went on day after day after day. So that's my story, Kevin. I'm sticking to it.
That's a darn good one, Brad. Thank you for sharing that. And I see that Morgan wanted to take a turn telling a cycle story. And here, Morgan, I'm going to put up the cycle again so that you have it to refer to. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Morgan, we can hear you.
Awesome. Yeah, so for me, my firm resolution, I think that's where I start, right?
Yeah, that's right, man. Well done.
Yeah, I actually just did my step one with Alex just the other day here, and
Oh, great.
yeah, so but for me, I went out drinking downtown Calgary around 2013, and I went to the 10 and 10 nightclub there, and we were drinking lots of shots of Hennessy that night, and drinking lots of beers and stuff, and just getting totally wasted and shit-faced. I ended up getting hospitalized. I think I ended up at the Foothills Hospital, or maybe it was the one by Chinook there. But when I was there, I made a resolution with my mom and my friends and stuff that that I was gonna get sober, and I was gonna get my shit together. And so that was the original plan. And then while I
Let
was
me
still
ask.
in the
Let me
hospital.
stop you right there, Morgan. Let me ask you. You're doing great so far. I just want to ask you a question. I don't want everyone to know this, when you made that resolution, sitting in the hospital with your mom, did you mean it?
I think I did mean it at the time.
I agree with you, Morgan. Okay. I agree with you. I think now, are there times that I would make a resolution and it was just bullshit and I knew that it wasn't? Yeah, there are times, but I think sometimes with tears of sincerity rolling down our eyes, you in the hospital with your mom, that's hard to like say that and to not mean it. We really mean it. We really mean it when we say it. But now what else? So you lay it on me, man. What happened?
So, you know, I made the resolution with my mom. I was in there for about 5 days actually, and like the first day getting in there, I was hooked up to tubes and everything, and totally the whole nine. And when I was in there, I started getting, you know, restless by day 4, day 5, and I was just irritable with you know, dealing with the staff at the hospital, like, you know, the people trying to help me, and like just totally and I was really discontent about, you know, what an ass I made of myself, and catching an ambulance bill and all that. And so yeah, I got out of the hospital, and within a few days, probably actually the next day of leaving, I called up my friend James to get a joint off of him. And when I went to the trailer park there, his mom already had a case of Lucky Lager there. And oh no, I'm forgetting my insane thought. So my insane thought was that if I only, because I was drinking Hennessy, right? My insane thought was that, you know, if I just drink beers, I will be able to, and drink more water and maybe eat, that I will be able to drink more responsibly next time. And yeah, so one thing led to the other, and by the time I went to my friend's house, you know, I had that first drink after smoking some weed there, and yeah, the spree, like I ended up doing cocaine that night too, and
Enough said,
yeah,
Morgan.
yeah,
Morgan, that's it.
yeah.
And here's the thing. So first of all, round of applause for Morgan. Round of applause for Morgan. Come on,
Thank
Scott
you.
B. Come on. Round of applause. There you go. All right, that was excellent, Morgan. That was excellent. The thing about the spree, and the reason why I cut you off is because the spree, it's uniform. We all know what happens on the spree. That's not the baffling part. We all know what happens. As soon as you said, I called James, everyone on this call knows who James is. Everyone on this call knows who James is, okay? Mine was named Luke, okay? Everyone on this call has their toxic twin. We all know who James is, okay? I knew it right there. That was excellent, Morgan. Excellent. And yeah, and this is so what I want to highlight in your story, Morgan, is something that's really important to understand about the cycle, because you said, you know, you were mad at yourself for everything that you had just done when you were drinking, right? Mad at yourself for what you ruined, and mad at yourself for the ambulance ride, catching an ambulance ride, all that kind of stuff, right? So listen, brothers and sisters, let's look at this. Every time I go through this cycle, and emerge remorseful with a firm resolution, does my spiritual sickness get worse, or does my spiritual sickness get better? It gets worse every time. Every time I go through this spree, emerging remorseful after I've hurt everyone I ever loved and destroyed everything I ever cared about again, it makes my spiritual sickness just that much worse every time. You know, guys, I remember one time being asked to go speak at an Al-Anon meeting. As an alcoholic, I was asked to go speak at this meeting, and I went and gave a talk, and it was great. It was fine. And at the end, all these moms are moms and dads, wanted to talk to me, and it was like a little Q&A. And one of the moms said, I have a question. I said, sure. What? Okay, great. She said, does my daughter know how much she's hurting me when she's drinking? That's a good question. I had to think about it. I had to ask myself, did I know how much I was hurting my mom when I was drinking? Did I know? And what occurred to me, and the answer is yes, absolutely. I knew how much I was hurting her, but this is what separates real alcoholics from moderate drinkers or even heavy drinkers. The knowledge and the feeling that I had for hurting my mom did not make me want to get sober. The knowledge and the feeling that I had for hurting my mom or my dad or my family in any way made me want to get drunk more than anything. You guys with me on that? So Morgan sitting in the hospital with his poor mom, tears streaming down her face, please. I remember my mom saying, Dr. Silkworth says, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. Frothy emotional appeal to me is a memory that I have of my mom standing at the top of a set of stairs saying, when did my son become such a pathetic drunk? Standing there in her little house coat because I had just stolen more alcohol from her. 3 o'clock in the morning. And she tried to get the beer back and I shoved her. Okay. I pushed her. I pushed my mom. Okay. And she's crying. Okay. Do you think that made me want to get sober? Do you think that made me want to take that 6-pack of beer and put it away and say, I'm sorry, Mom, let's go get a cup of coffee? No, it made me want to drink that beer instantaneously, to do anything to make that feeling go away. Anything to make that feeling go away. You guys with me on that? Okay. That's the unmanageability. That feeling is the unmanageability of alcoholism, and it will always take me back there. So that was excellent, Morgan. Does anybody else want to take a turn? Anyone else want to try? Yeah, DL. Let's rock. Do you want me to put it up, DL? Do you want me to put the cycle up?
No,
so you
it's
can see
okay.
it?
Oh, I have it. Yeah.
All right.
I have the little sticker. I'm
Great.
just- yeah, I'll give it a whirl here. So one of my the firm resolution for me started out of my coming out of treatment for the first time. Okay, I came out of Lander, and I came out with that firm resolution, like, I'm not going to drink again. Obviously, everything leading up to there that got me there. And so, yeah, I came out and I had that, I'd made that promise to my family and to everybody that I knew. And that was it. Like, that's what I wanted, right? Desperately. And at the time, if I'm honest, that restless, irritable, and discontent, I can't say I knew that that's what was going on. But so there I am about, I don't know, however long later. And, I couldn't stand living in my own skin. And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to just have a drink and I'll quit when I feel better.
Yeah.
And I'll quit when I feel better. And so, and I thought, I'll just have one. Right. And well, that didn't just happen. Right. And it just, it took me on a far worse spree than I'd been in prior to. And, and then ended up, coming out, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 days after that. And when I finally kind of came to, if you will, I'm laying on the basement floor in like a puddle of sweat and just disgusting, after 4-day bender. And, the stupid thing is I was like, what the hell did I do? Right. But guess what? I came out of that feeling, the guilt, the shame, and the remorse and the firm resolution, but the cycle started again. Right. And so
Repeated over and over
and over
is what Silkworth says. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. Now, Let's pause there, DL. Great job. Round of applause for DL, everyone. Round of applause for DL. Thank you for your bravery and your courage. So now let's see what the solution is, okay? So it's 7:45. We've got about 15 minutes to go. Let's go through the rest of the chapter. Let's see what Dr. Silkworth says now, after giving us this cycle, what he has seen, this miraculous thing he has seen happen with Bill Wilson and Alcoholics Anonymous.
On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules.
Okay, and when he says those few simple rules, what's he talking about? 12 steps, baby. That's it. Okay, 12 steps. That's it. Which even at that time, hadn't fully formulated into the 12 steps yet. When Dr. Silkworth was really originally working with Bill Wilson, it was the 6 steps of the Oxford group. Okay, on page 263, you can go check those out. Really, at base, it's like surrender, confession, restitution, and service. Those 3 simple rules. If I can live by those 3 simple rules: surrender, confession, restitution, and service. That's it. Benjamin, I can see you flipping through the book. Are you looking at page 263? Page 263, man, right in the back, the 6 steps of the Oxford group. You'll see them right there. That's beautiful. Okay, Brad, back to you, please.
Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal, "Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me." Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it often is not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit that we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal, which was to be settled on a certain date favorable to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomena of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape, they were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomena of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight.
Okay, and very sadly, quite sadly, what Dr. Silkworth is referring to there is suicide. Okay, Alcoholics Anonymous, unfortunately, we are people who sometimes will make that supreme sacrifice. Okay, and the saddest thing is that most alcoholics that die by suicide do not die by suicide when they're drinking. Most alcoholics that die by suicide die in during that period of spiritual sickness, during that period of restless irritability and discontent. My grand sponsor, Clancy, he would often joke that he's a successful suicide. Like, he actually committed suicide and died, and then they brought him back. And it was not because he was drinking. It was because his son had died while he was drinking, and he wasn't there to support his wife. He'd been out on a bender and his son died. And the guilt that he felt from that was ripping him apart. And in the period of sobriety, because he made a vow to his infant son on his infant son's casket. He made a vow, "I will never drink again, John," his little baby boy. "I will never drink again." And Clancy then, during that period of sobriety, tried to commit suicide and died, and then they brought him back to life. And he drank again. Okay? So most alcoholics, it talks about that supreme sacrifice, okay? That supreme sacrifice. If you read the chapter, the 2 employers, if you think I'm kidding around, the chapter 2 employers, you read that chapter, the first 3 people in the chapter 2 employers, all 3 of those men all die by suicide. All of them. All of them. Right? That's what happens to people like us. So that's the bad news. The good news is we have a way out of that. We don't just have a solution for drinking here in AA. We have a solution for alcoholism. You guys with me? I hope you guys are starting to understand the difference between a drinking problem and alcoholism. Alcoholism is a disease that begins when I stop drinking. And one of the most terrible symptoms of the disease of alcoholism is suicidal depression. That's just the way it is. So, Brad, back to you. The classifications of alcoholics.
The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We are familiar with this type. They're always going on the wagon for keeps. They are over remorseful and make many resolutions, but never a decision.
Okay, that's type 1. And Dr. Silkworth is going to give us five types of alcoholics here that he's going to describe. 5 different types, and then I'm going to summarize this for you. So number 2.
There is the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment.
Number 3.
There is the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger.
Number 4.
There is the manic depressive type who is perhaps the least understood by his friends and about whom a whole chapter could be written.
And number 5, and incidentally, I just want to say this is the category I fall under.
Then there are types entirely normal in every respect, except in the effect alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people.
Just in case you were wondering which type I am. All right, so look, I'm going to kind of simplify it, and God bless Dr. Silkworth for his words and for writing all this about alcoholics and his estimation of the different types of alcoholics that they are. But I need to simplify it, and I want you guys to simplify it. I asked my sponsees to simplify it because I've seen a lot of people get just twisted around a bend trying to figure out which one of these types they are. It doesn't really matter. It does not really matter. The only thing that matters is the next paragraph.
All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomena of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence.
Okay, and I know I said this last week when I want to point out again, April 10th, 1939, the big book goes out in the world, and this idea of abstinence as a solution for alcoholism was brand new. Brand new. The idea that they would never be able to control their drinking or learn how to drink better or anything like that. This is new. This is new. This idea of total abstinence being the only cure, the only... Nowadays, I mean, we all understand, hey, alcoholics can't ever drink again. We get that. Everyone gets that. Okay? At this time, that was new. That was new news in 1939.
This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol.
You know, I love that. I want to point out 2 things about that one particular story. First of all, he talks about, he appears self-reliance, right? He's brimming over with self-reliance, okay? Don't be confused. AA is not a self-reliance program. Okay? What I want you to understand is that this is a non-alcoholic named Dr. Silkworth who is looking at this man. Okay? And he's saying this guy is filled with self-reliance. What do you and I know? What is he actually filled with? What do I need to be filled with? God reliance. God reliance. Okay? That's what we rely upon. Just to the extent that we fully rely on God and do as he would have us, does he enable us to match calamity with serenity. Okay? This is about God reliance, not self-reliance. But the nice thing is, God doesn't take credit for it. So I get to look to the world like a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. Okay? But it's God working through us. It happens through me, not of me. Okay? I am a channel. What does step 11 prayer say? God, make me a channel. Make me a channel of God. Okay? And so the other thing I like to say, I heard this line I like a lot. Alcoholism is the only disease where the sufferer can actually become better than they were before they had the disease. Okay? Alcoholism, and we see it with this man here. Alcoholism is the only disease where the sufferer can actually become better than they were before they had the disease. We have an opportunity here to become weller than well in Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay? This spiritual awakening that not a lot of people often get to have in life, man. I think we get to we get to touch upon something really, really magical. And I'm in Houston, and just last night I went to an AA meeting in person. I haven't done that many times in Houston. Usually I do it online with you guys like this, but last night I went to an in-person meeting. Brothers and sisters, let me tell you, it was magical. And not because Houston is special or Houston AA is special, but because Alcoholics Anonymous is special. And I went into that AA club room, and I'm here to tell you, AA club rooms in Houston, Texas look exactly the same as they do in Canada. Okay. It was like right down to the wood paneling on the walls and the little praying hands everywhere and the little Dr. Bob, all the stuff, man. It was beautiful. I loved it. We really get to touch upon something very special in Alcoholics Anonymous. Something really beautiful. All right, Brad, back to you, and we'll round out here in just a page and a half, guys.
When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and decided his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. He was rescued.
Brad, let me stop you. Let me ask you a question. It's itching me right now, Rob. Is this Fitz Mayo? Who's the first one? Who's the other one that we just read? Who is that one? It's
Hank
unknown, that guy.
Parkhurst. No, Hank Parkhurst.
Hank Parkhurst, and this is Fitz Mayo. All right,
Correct.
good. Thank you. Thank you. You're the man, Rob.
He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought the treatment a waste of effort, unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. His alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology, and we doubted if even that would have any effect.
I talked about this. Sorry, Brad. I talked about this last week, and I just want to hammer it home one more time because I've heard people in AA say, like, talk about Alcoholics Anonymous and say, like talk about a psychic change or talk about moral psychology, for example, or lots of different stuff like that. And I just want to reiterate, that's what Dr. Silkworth is talking about. That's not what we're looking for in AA. Okay. Do not be mistaken. We are not looking for moral psychology in AA. How do I know? It says in We Agnostics, if a better code of morals would have sufficed, many of us would have gotten sober long ago. This isn't about moral psychology. It looks like what he calls moral psychology because he's a medical doctor. He's not a spiritual man. He's going to say one little spiritual thing here at the end. One little spiritual thing. I think he was starting to be, kind of won over a little bit by what he saw. Okay. But he's a medical doctor. He doesn't need what we need. We need a spiritual awakening in Alcoholics Anonymous and nothing else. So don't get hung up on these words that he uses like, psychology, psychiatrist, moral psychology, psychic change, all this stuff. And this is just what a medical doctor is witnessing. Okay. He's seeing this happen to these men and he knows no other way to explain it. So he has to find words for it. And that's a hard thing to do. It's inexplicable, these spiritual awakenings. But I just wanted to mention that. Don't get hung up on this moral psychology, because I hear people talk about that in AA sometimes, and I think it's misleading. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for, what my life depends on, is a spiritual awakening as the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. All right? Back to you, Brad.
However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is a fine specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet.
All right. So Brad, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through and through, and though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. William D. Silkworth, MD.
Beautiful. And that's the only kind of spiritual thing he says. He talks about prayer. He's willing to talk about prayer, right? He may, although he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. That's the one kind of spiritual thing that he says. And I talked about this last week, guys. There's a lot of lines in our book that I use as a benchmark to ask myself how I'm doing. And there's a great one. He's as fine a specimen of what we'll call it adulthood as one could wish to meet. Okay. I wonder if you called Dr. Collins, my doctor, and said, "Hey, Dr. Collins, what do you think about Kevin?" Okay. I wonder, would he say, well, Kevin's as fine a specimen of adulthood as one could hope to meet? I don't know. Is that what Alcoholics Anonymous is doing for me today? I don't know, but that's what it was doing for the first 100. Okay. That's how Dr. Silkworth was describing one of his patients that had been a hopeless alcoholic, and he's now as fine a specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. I like to think about that, right? And that's the benchmark that we aspire to. So that's it, guys. It's past the hour, so that's it. That's all. We're done for tonight. Recording.